This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello and welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, where we discuss the latest and greatest news in the world of sports. As always, I'm Alex, here to tell you the news of the week. This is Tuesday, September 20th. I am without Ben again today, but don't worry, he'll be back tomorrow, and we have another jam-packed show for you tomorrow as well. And we have a new co-host joining us, third host here on the sports show, joining us starting tomorrow, so it's pretty exciting there as well. Today we're going to be talking about Monday Night Football, an update, but a recap of that game between the Eagles and Bears. We're going to be talking some injury updates as well, as we have some news on some injuries that we had mentioned in yesterday's show between some marquee players and then a college football player as well. And then I'm going to be updating, the MLB races and the standings as we head into the final stretch here of the MLB season. But let's go ahead and start with the Monday Night Football game. It's between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Chicago Bears at Soldier Field. 29-14 win there for the Eagles. Carson Wentz, 21-34, 190 yards passing and a touchdown. Jay Cutler, on the other hand, 12 for 17, 157 and an interception. But he left this game, and I'll get into that more at the end of this segment, but he left this game with an injury. In comes Brian Hoyer, who was 9 for 12, 78 yards. They weren't getting much going there in the first place, really. Now, speaking of things that weren't really getting going, we could talk just the offense in general for the Bears. They did have 14 points, one touchdown from Jeremy Langford, and I believe a return touchdown as well from Eddie Royal. Other than that, they didn't get much from their offense. 11 rushes for 28 yards in Jeremy Langford's end, 3 for 22 from their running back Jordan Howard. And then 1 and 2 rushes from the remaining 3 people on their stat list, Kevin White, Kadeem Carey, and Paul Lassick. 9 yards, 3 yards, and 2 yards. So not a lot in their rushing game at all. 18 rushes total for 64 yards. It's an average as a team of 3.6 yards. Wasn't getting much going for them. And on the receiving side of the ball, they had a little bit more. Alshon Jeffrey had 5 catches for 96 yards. But that was helped by a long of 49. You see, in total targets 7. It's a pretty much an Alshon Jeffrey kind of day. 4 receptions from Eddie Royal there, 52 yards. Again, though, a long of 31, so he's looking at just about 21 yards otherwise of offense on his end. And then Kevin White, he just hasn't gotten going yet. In his second year, kind of still his rookie year. He didn't get to play his first year. It's kind of what you're looking at with him. 4 for 36 on 6 targets. Zach Miller didn't add much else. 33 yards on 4 targets, and everybody else had single-digit yardage. It's not really what you need to see from your offense when, no offense to the Bears, their defense is not what it has been in the past. Not to mention 2 fumbles by the Chicago Bears offense, 1 Cutler, 1 Langford, that resulted in both being lost from them, and then a defense that didn't get, they didn't really get anything in terms of significant pressure on the quarterback. They had 2 sacks. They did force him out of the pocket at times, but it's not the defense we know when it comes to the Bears. They had no interceptions on the night, no fumbles to take, nothing. It was honestly quite a below average performance by the offense and defensive side of the ball. The best thing I guess I could say in terms of bright spot for the Bears was their special teams. Deontay Thomas had 2 kick returns for 42 yards total, so that's not bad there. Eddie Royal, like I said, had a touchdown in the punt game, 1 return for 65 yards. Very nice down the sideline there. Connor Barth missed a field goal, though. He made 2 extra points, but he missed a field goal there. So, bright spots and dark spots. In contrast, the Eagles, you have, like I said, Wentz, 190 yards and 1 touchdown. Darren Sproles, 40 yards on the ground. Ryan Matthews, 32. And then a mixture of 16, 10, 2, and 0 from the rest of the rushes. But that landed you with 32 total carries for 100 yards. You want your offense rushing for 100 yards a game. You want that. You want that balance. And then on the receiving side, just more of the same. Jordan Matthews, 6 for 71. Trey Burton, 5 for 49 with a touchdown reception. Nelson Aguilar had 4 for 42, and then 2 for 18, 8, 3, 0, and a -1 reception for Josh Huff. But they put together good drives. Their offensive numbers aren't staggering, but they put together good drives. And then, like I said, their defense played well. They had 2 fumble recoveries. They had an interception of Jay Cutler. It was a good night in a sense for the team, and they got away with the win. They didn't play beautiful ball. They made some mental errors, but Nigel Bradham had that interception. He returned for 28 yards. They looked good in sense of they looked good week 1, and they came back and they looked pretty similar week 2. They beat a team they should have beaten. In my opinion, I had the Eagles winning this game. I think I said 24-14, so I wasn't very far off with 29-14. But Caleb Sturgis, 3 for 3 in his field goals, with long of 53. He missed an extra point, but you'll take that when you're winning. So it very well could have been 30-14. But like I said, he missed that extra point. A lot of punts in this game, 9 total, 5 for the Eagles, 4 for Chicago, a net yardage of 151 and 218. Lots of punts. It wasn't the most entertaining game, but a win is a win. Philadelphia is tied for first place in their division now in the NFC East with the New York Giants, who are both 2-2. Dallas comes in at 1-1, and Washington 0-2. Chicago is now at the sole possession of number 4 and last in their division in the NFC North. Minnesota 2-0 with their impressive win on Sunday night against the Packers. Detroit and Green Bay are both, the recently mentioned Packers are both 1-1 after good and bad games. And Chicago, like we said, are 0-2. They're going to have to turn something around, man. And that leads me into my next segment, and that is the fact that Jay Cutler is injured. Jay Cutler injured the thumb on his passing hand last night. Did not return. He looked to be fiddling with it not long after the play in which people assume it was hurt in the third quarter. But or even in the end of the second. I'm not sure exactly when they said it. I remember the play, but I know he did leave in the third. But he wore a cast over his hand in the post-game interviews, and he says he's concerned. He's a quarterback. You need your right thumb. It's not. It's just more flames. Gas to the fire, I guess you could say, in the sense of those who don't think that Cutler can stand up to some punishment that he receives in what used to be a very black and blue NFC North. He said that he aggravated the thumb early in the game. He couldn't really grip the ball. Said it contributed his throwing the interception to Nigel Bradham with 36 seconds left in the third. So that's when he did leave. And then, of course, turned out to be his final play of the game. Brian Hoyer came in. He said he couldn't get as much on as he wanted to and put over the top of the linebacker, and that's where the interception came from. And that's when he knew his day was done. Putting the team and the offense in jeopardy. Even with Cutler on the field, he wasn't. He just wasn't really moving the ball. You know what I mean? One thing, though, as I said, people have had this stigma towards Cutler that he can't stay healthy and such. Before Cutler left the field, cameras actually caught him in a kind of an argument with outside linebacker Pernell McPhee. McPhee is one of the Bears, quote-unquote leaders of the defense, and he's on the physically unable to perform list. Cutler said, I'm fine with that. He's a passionate guy. Everybody has a lot invested in this. He does as well. No one likes to lose. So probably just some upset folks there as well. But he wasn't having a miserable game. Just, again, the offense wasn't moving. Cutler's missed 15 games because of injury since 2010. He broke his same right thumb 5 years ago, November, against San Diego Chargers in 2011, following a tackle attempt through an interception. Unfortunately, it looks like the Bears might be heading into week 3 without Jay Cutler. You know, it's going to depend on how badly this injury is going to affect him. Again, I will have, and Ben and I will, and our new co-host, of course, we'll have more information as that comes to us, as I will after I break about some of the this weekend injuries. But they face the Dallas Cowboys on the 25th, and that is a Sunday night game, I do believe. No. That is a afternoon game. No, yeah, Sunday night game. Oh, woohoo. Chicago Bears, Dallas Cowboys. I could sound more enthused. No offense. But looks like Cutler might miss this game. It depends. It's a longer week, roughly. No, it's about a shorter week. You know, you just have the luxury of having the final game. But it's going to be a tough game for them, regardless if Cutler plays or not. If he does not go, Brian Hoyer will be the quarterback. We'll have a battle of the backups between Brian Hoyer and Dak Prescott, who is still yet to have thrown an interception, a rookie quarterback record. 75 pass attempts, no interceptions. No touchdown passes yet either, but you know, he's definitely helping win them games, 1-1. All right, we'll take a first break here. We'll come back, and I'll go and update you on the very notable injuries between some very key running backs and a very key Oregon Duck as well. So we'll take our first break, and we'll be right back here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And we're back here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. And we're going to dive into now some injuries. We had injuries this weekend that were notable, to say the least. One of the most notable being Adrian Peterson, the workhorse running back of the Minnesota Vikings. He exited the game on Sunday night with what looked like an apparent knee injury. Couldn't put much pressure on that said knee. Excuse me. People feared the worst. He is somebody who tore their ACL a few years ago, as a matter of fact. Well, it turns out that as of right now, Adrian Peterson suffered a torn meniscus during Sunday night's win over the Packers. And, I'm not sure how severe a torn meniscus is in terms of playing through pain. But Zimmer later told reporters that Peterson is currently going through the evaluation process to figure out what the procedure will be and the options that we have. He is not ruled out for their game this week, which is that's interesting to me because I'm not sure, like I said, the significance of a meniscus injury. Again, I'm not a doctor or anything like that. I have hurt my knees plenty in my own ways, but I definitely have never torn a meniscus. Other things, yes, but meniscus, no. And I'm not sure the significance in terms of ability to play and such. They have the Vikings have the Panthers Sunday morning in Carolina, as a matter of fact, which should be a tough game for them, regardless if they had a fully healthy Adrian Peterson or not. But as torn ligaments go, you qualify this as relatively good news, especially because not putting any pressure on that leg. It looked like it was a very bad injury. And like I said, Zimmer has not dismissed the possibility that he could play on Sunday. Peterson's been somebody that we've seen, recover from a lot of injuries in his career. But at the same time, would it be better just to have him rest a bit? Before the Vikings lost Adrian Peterson on Sunday night, he wasn't doing much. He had 31 yards on 19 carries this season before the injury. That's in 2 games. Adrian Peterson has had 100 yards in one half. and now you have 2 games into the season, and he only has 31 yards on 19 carries. They played the Titans week 1. The Packers, I understand. He's killed the Packers in the past, but eventually there's going to be a game where they just kind of shut him down, you would think, But the Titans week 1, they won that game, but he had no yardage in that game relatively. So would it be better to rest him? Would it be better to have him sit? You have Jarrett McKinnon behind him, Matt Asiata, who were both there when Peterson went down. Not went down, but a couple years ago when he didn't play because of the child abuse incident case in 2014. And I believe, if not both of them, one of them was there when he had his ACL injury as well. But would it be better for him just to sit for a while? I don't know. Again, he's not lighting the world afire like a typical Adrian Peterson does. 31 yards on 19 carries is bad. Regardless if you're Barry Sanders, Walter Payton, Adrian Peterson, or a 5th-round running back who's getting some time, in the late games. That's not good. 31 yards on 19 carries. That's not what you want. That's really not. So we'll have to see where they go from here. You know what I mean? I say sit him for a little bit, let him come back fully healthy, and you have a great defense. Sam Bradford looked really good on Sunday night. They have a tough game against the Panthers, but they have winnable games after that. The Giants, that's a winnable game for them with their defense. The Texans, the Eagles, the Bears, these are games they can win. They need him to be healthy down the stretch because with this defense, going into the season, even with the offense understood to not be a huge powerhouse, they were a playoff favorite. So I think get him healthy, get him back to the AP people know he is, and go from there. Now, another running back that injured himself and has something in common with Adrian Peterson now is Danny Woodhead, who unfortunately is out for the season with a torn ACL. That's just another loss for the Chargers. They lost Keenan Allen, obviously, earlier with the same injury. But Danny Woodhead went down in a blowout win over the Chargers, as a matter of fact. Been placed on injured reserve as of yesterday. Yeah, unfortunately, he's done, Melvin Gordon seems to finally be doing well in this offense, after not having much of any kind of production last year. No touchdowns to speak of, and he has, on the season through 2 games, 159 yards and 3 touchdowns over just the first 2 games, while Woodhead, he added 116 yards rushing so far this year to complement him. That guys like that, they're not easy to replace. Danny Woodhead is a kind of a do-it-all running back in that sense. He's a good safety blanket. He's a great open field runner. Last year he caught 80 passes for 755 yards and 6 touchdowns. He's a difference maker for a guy that's not necessarily a every down kind of starter, kind of key player. He kind of almost fills that Darren Sproles role that was so popular in San Diego when he was there. He's a good runner. He's got great vision, and he's a really good catching running back out of the backfield also. I don't know if it's because of his size or what it is, but he's never really gotten the credit for how good he is. But I just, it's a shame to see him go down. I've always liked Danny Woodhead. There's the years I've had him on my fantasy team. It's funny, my mom always says that if you have Danny Woodhead, he doesn't do anything, and you don't play him, and he's amazing. She's always frustrated. But, yeah, Danny Woodhead has always been a guy to go about it the right way, and it's unfortunate to see him not get to play the rest of the year. He's a player who produced 80 catches on 106 targets and averaged nearly 10 yards per reception last year. And again, you got to replace that production. It's a shame. It's really a shame to see. I hope he comes back strong next year and gets playing again at the level he played. And finally, moving on, Oregon Ducks. They have lost Devon Allen, wide receiver, for the season with an injured knee, unfortunately. He suffered the left knee injury Saturday against Nebraska. Allen is somebody we've talked about before on our shows, whether it was this show and the football show, but He competed in the Rio Olympics this year. He finished 5th in the 110-meter hurdles, but he was injured covering a punt in the fourth quarter of a close loss between the Ducks and the Cornhuskers, 35-32. A source close to the team says that Allen has also, like Danny Woodhead and Adrian Pearson in the past, a torn ACL. Excuse me. And to add injury to injury, Oregon also announced on Monday that their starting left tackle, Tyrell Crosby, will miss the rest of the season as well with an injured left foot. Man, this is a season injury. Is the second of Allen's career, as a matter of fact. He tore his ACL once before, if this is indeed a torn ACL, in the Ducks' Rose Bowl win over Jameis Winston's Florida State, 59-20, 2014. He rehabbed the injury to return in time for the track season, the following season, so, 2016 season, of course, which led to his Olympic bid. But, yeah, it's not the first time, if it's an ACL, he knows how to go about it, but that's just one more injury that you can only tear your ACL so many times, you know what I mean? So it's unfortunate to see, but hopefully he gets good and gets healthy, and I'm not sure what year he is in school, if he has another year under him or not, but hopefully he does. It's tough to end that way. Excuse me. All right, well, that's it for football. We're going to take a last break, and I'm going to update you on the MLB races heading into the final stretch of the year here in the baseball season. So we'll take our last break real quick, and we'll be right back with baseball here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we are back here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. We're going to talk baseball. We are coming down to the thick of it in the MLB, and the races are there's some that are very far from finished and some that are closer than that. Let's start with the AL, and we'll say the AL East. The Red Sox currently have a 4-game lead over the Blue Jays and the Orioles, in first place in that division there. The AL Central, the Cleveland Indians have a little bit more of a cushion there. 7-game lead over the Detroit Tigers, 9.5 over the Kansas City Royals. And the Texas Rangers have a 9.5-game lead, the biggest in the AL, over the Houston Astros and the Seattle Mariners. Then you look at the wild card standings for each of these teams, each of these divisions. The AL wild card is tight. You have the Blue Jays and the Orioles holding on to the 2 top spots, trailed closely by 2.5 games of the Detroit Lions and Houston Astros at 3, as well as Seattle at 3 as well. It's getting tight. We move to the NL East. You have the Washington Nationals with an 8-game lead over the New York Mets. Excuse me. The Chicago Cubs, who have already clinched their division because of the fact that they are 16 games ahead of the St. Louis Cardinals, who are second place in the NL Central. And then we have the NL West. The Los Angeles Dodgers are currently in first place there, being trailed by the San Francisco Giants. They just opened a 3-game series in L.A., first of which went to the Dodgers last night. They have one more series to end the year, but it looks like the Dodgers, with the way the Giants are playing and the bullpen there in late games, failing them over and over and over again, that the Dodgers are going to take this one as well. 6 games, I would have said, is doable before the turnaround that the Giants have had, but I say that's almost just insurmountable now. We look at the National League wild card. The Mets are now in the top spot of the wild card standings there, with 80 and 70 of the record there for them. Now the Giants are tied with the Cardinals, but it looks like the Cardinals have the head-to-head win at 79 and 71. So I believe if the season was to end this very second, that would put the New York Mets and the St. Louis Cardinals in the wild card one-game playoff. It's a shame to look at, depending on who your alliances lie with for some of these teams. The Marlins were in it. They're 4 games back now. It's probably unlikely they make it. 4.5 for the Pirates. The Giants, again, have just sunk their ship since the second half of the year started. They're now 79 and 71. They were games and games ahead of 500 before the All-Star break. It's a shame to look at for some of these teams. You know what I mean? You had, the Mariners, who again were 3 games behind. The Yankees, who at times thought this was just a kiss it goodbye season. Some of these teams were in the running. Houston had dropped far down, like I said, 3 games behind. It's going to be a really, really, really interesting end of the year for sure. Like I said, there's a lot of division games to end the year. Dodgers finish off in San Francisco at the end of the year against the Giants. It'll be interesting to see if that gets, if it's a who cares, end of the year for one of the teams, or if it's going to mean something. I believe the Cardinals play the Cubs one more time. The Mets have a crazy, weird schedule to end the year in different time zones and a bunch of different cities. It's going to be a wacky ending to the year, and as of right now, it remains to be seen. Is anybody going to be able to knock off the Cubs this year? Because in the NL, that looks like the team that's going to be in the World Series, and in the AL, I don't know, man. You could really look at the Red Sox as a team. You could look at the Cleveland Indians, who've been playing amazing all year. And weirdly enough, the team with the best record in the AL is the Texas Rangers. So who is going to be able to make their way to the World Series? Man, we're going to be watching it all year, and all month when we get to the end of the season, and next month as the World Series eventually gets started after the playoffs, which should be a very good playoff this year. Definitely some good matchups, throughout the year. So be interesting to see how and what happens. Baseball season, this is the best time of year. You got baseball, you got football going, and eventually basketball kind of gets started. There's like a sweet spot where all 3 of them are going at the same time. It's pretty rad, guys. But that's it for my show today. I have to do football. So on that note, Ben will be back tomorrow, and we will have a new co-host that we'll introduce to you tomorrow as well. Until then, I will be back then. Until then, you can find us on gsmcpodcast.com with all of our wonderful shows and portfolios in which you can hear multiple subjects in sports and, ways of life, lifestyle, technology, television, movies, all the good stuff. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at gsmc_sports. You can find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Google Play at the GSMC Sports Podcast, as well as on our website, like I said, gsmcpodcast.com. And you can find us on YouTube and Facebook at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, the GSMC Sports Podcast. As always, I'm Alex for Ben. We will see you guys tomorrow for a brand new show. Have a good rest of your day, and enjoy the sports of the night.